All right, let's kick off another deep dive. This time we're exploring a collection of short stories, The Copycat and Other Stories, by Mary E. Wilkins Freeman. And it's like we get these glimpses into life from another era, almost like opening a time capsule.
It really is. These short stories pack so much human experience into these small packages. You start reading a few and you realize they're like little windows into these universal truths that, kind of transcend
Yeah,
time.
exactly. It's like you read them and suddenly it's like, wait, I've totally felt that too, you know? It's like holding up a mirror to yourself, to your desires, to your struggles. So let's jump right in. The first story, The Copycat, throws us right into those feelings of like longing and belonging. We meet this young girl, Amelia Wheeler, who's completely obsessed with this like beautiful and popular girl, Lily Jennings. And it's like Amelia wants to be Lily so bad. And it's almost kind of hard to watch, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, haven't we all felt that at
Yeah.
some point, that feeling? Like you just want to be someone else, be someone cooler or more popular.
Oh, absolutely. That desire to fit in, that's just human nature. And what Freeman does so well is she doesn't shy away from the emotions of it all. Like, remember that scene where Amelia has to wear that, like, old gingham frock to school, and Lily shows up in a dress that's just, like, picture perfect, like a white flower.
Oh my gosh, that scene breaks my heart every time. It's like all of Amelia's insecurity just laid bare for everyone to see.
Exactly. And you've got Lily right there, like the embodiment of everything Amelia wants. And that just makes the feeling even stronger. And such a powerful way to show like that gap between how we see ourselves and how we want to be seen by everyone else.
It really makes you think, like, what's going on with Amelia? Why is she trying so hard to copy Lily? Is it really just about, like, the clothes, or there's something deeper going on?
I think it goes way beyond just wanting to wear the same clothes. It's about like wanting to be in Lily's world, to be accepted, be admired the way she is. And that feeling, I think everyone can relate to that, no matter how old you are.
Yeah, totally. And what's interesting is, even though Amelia's trying so hard to be like Lily, they actually have this genuine affection for each other. Like, remember those conversations they have by the river?
Yeah, those are really special moments away from all the pressure, all the social stuff. You see them connecting, sharing their hopes and dreams. It's like it reminds us that even those people who seem to have it all, they have their own vulnerabilities too.
Yeah, it's true. It makes Amelia's attempts to copy Lily even more, like, poignant, you know? It's like
That's
she's trying to grasp at something
Yeah.
that she can never really have.
Yeah. It's part of growing up, isn't it? Figuring out who you are apart from who you admire and finding your own way to kind of shine.
Okay, so from Amelia wanting to fit in, let's switch gears to Johnny in the Woods. This story's got a completely different energy. It's like, imagine Johnny Trumbull, this little ball of energy, stuck with a family who's like all about quiet contemplation.
It's such a funny contrast. You've got Johnny kicking up dust, always wanting adventure, and then his parents and uncle, they're just lost in thought. It's like they're speaking two different languages.
Totally. And his Aunt Janet, she's always got her nose in a book, like completely oblivious to everything happening around her.
You can't help but wonder, how do people navigate that? Being so different,
Yeah.
like, can you be both a dreamer and still, like, grounded in reality?
It's a good question. And Johnny, with his Robin Hood schemes, he's definitely a dreamer. He's got it in his head to fix all the wrongs in his town,
hmm
starting with finding better homes for all these neglected cats. It's hard not to root for him, even if it's a little crazy.
It's a noble mission, even if his methods are a little unorthodox. And let's not forget his partner in crime, Arnold Carruth, with that ridiculous outfit, green silk stockings and riding breeches. It's just too much.
Oh, I know. That image cracks me up every time. And of course, their whole mission goes hilariously wrong. And wouldn't you know it, Lily Jennings pops up again. It's like, she's a magnet for trouble.
It's true. But even with all the humor, there's this underlying theme of like wanting to make the world a better place, even in small ways.
Totally. Like, maybe Johnny does make a difference in his own way.
It makes you think, what are we doing that might seem small, but maybe has a bigger impact than we realize?
Okay, now, get ready for a bit of a shift in mood. Noblesse hits you right in the feels. This is Margaret Lee's story, and her life just gets turned upside down after her family loses all their money.
And what makes her situation even harder is her size. It becomes this like vulnerability in this new world she's in. It's really sad to see how something that was just part of who she was is now used against her.
It's like she's carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders,
Yeah.
literally and figuratively. She goes from a life of like privilege and elegance to being treated like a spectacle, something to gawk at.
It's a reminder how fast things can change and how society can be so quick to judge.
Yeah, it's harsh. But even in this bleak situation, there's a glimmer of hope. This scholar, Sidney Lord, he sees what's happening to Margaret and offers her, like, refuge in his own home.
It's such a kind thing to do, especially thinking about the social norms back then. It would have been much easier to just look away to protect his own reputation.
Right, but he chooses to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And that says a lot about who he is. It's like true kindness takes courage.
It really does. And it's beautiful how even in these like dark times, human connection can kind of blossom in unexpected ways.
Okay, now hold on tight, because we're diving into a world of mystery and intrigue with the Amethyst Comb. This one's all about Jane Carew, this older woman who's all about propriety, and her friend Viola Longstreet, who seems much younger. The story gets really interesting when Jane's prized amethyst comb goes missing and then reappears in the strangest place.
It's like a puzzle box. Every little detail hints at something more. And then you've got Harold Lynn, this charming but maybe not so trustworthy young man, and it just adds another layer. You're constantly trying to figure out who to trust, what everyone's motives are.
And that comb becomes this symbol, right,
Yeah.
of lost innocence, of how appearances can be deceiving and how complicated relationships can be, even when they seem simple.
Yeah.
And just when you think you've got Viola figured out, she does something completely unexpected. It leaves you wondering, what is she thinking? And what's going to happen to her?
Yeah, it reminds you that things aren't always what they seem. And even, like, the smallest things can have hidden meanings and secrets. It makes you think what details in our own lives might be clues to a bigger story that we're not seeing.
Ooh, that's a good one. And we've got even more stories to unpack, but we'll save those for part 2. All right, welcome back. We're still diving deep into The Copycat and Other Stories by Mary E. Wilkins Freeman. And, man, there are just so many interesting characters and themes to explore.
You know, it's like each story, it gives you this peek into a different part of what it means to be human. But they all share this idea of resilience.
Yeah.
These characters, they face some tough stuff, like social pressures, financial struggles, even their own inner battles, and they just keep going.
Yeah, for sure. And that resilience, it shows up in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's quiet strength. Other times it's this, like, sudden burst of courage. So let's take a look at Little Lucy Rose. This story is about a little girl growing up in a world of quiet adults, and she finds comfort in the way her schoolmates show her affection. It's pretty interesting.
It is. The contrast between Lucy's home life and the world of, kids, it's fascinating. Like, remember her Aunt Martha? She always wanted those, like, subdued play dates.
It's like she was trying to get Lucy ready for a life of quiet contemplation or something. But then you see Lucy at school, and it's like the opposite. Her classmates are just showering her with affection. It's like they just know what she needs without even realizing it.
Yeah. It just shows you how powerful connection is, even the simplest kind, Kids, they're so in tune with emotions, they just react so honestly.
Yeah. And then there's Jim Patterson with his little kid crush on Lucy. It's so cute how he tries to win her over. Remember that part where he picks 9 hawthorn leaves because she can't remember what 7 + 2 is?
Oh, yeah, that's such a sweet detail. It shows you how kids figure things out, In Jim's little head, it makes perfect sense. And Lucy, she gets it too. She accepts it without question.
And speaking of things that are hard to understand, there's that whole incident where Lucy gets kidnapped by this woman who thinks Lucy is her daughter who passed away.
Oh, yeah, that part definitely takes a turn. About grief, loss, how those things can twist your perception. It makes you wonder, where's the line between love and delusion?
It's a good question. But it also shows how strong community bonds can be, how people will go to great lengths to protect each other,
Yeah.
even if their actions aren't exactly right.
Yeah. It's a reminder that even in our worst moments, there's still that human connection. It kind of ties us all together.
Okay, so now for story, that'll warm your heart even if it's freezing outside.
Yeah.
Daniel and Little Daniel. It's about this older man, Daniel Wise. He's terrified of summer heat, but he ends up taking care of his grandniece, Little Daniel.
Oh.
And, talk about an unlikely pair.
Right. It's a recipe for both humor and, like, genuine emotion. You've got this grumpy old guy who just wants to stay inside away from the sun, and then he's suddenly responsible for this delicate child who needs fresh air, needs to be active. It's a great setup.
And then you've got Sarah Dean, the housekeeper. She's obsessed with feeding everyone these heavy meals, even though it's like 100 degrees out.
It's like she wants everyone to get heat stroke. But what's amazing is how Daniel steps up. Even though he's scared, he takes little Daniel out for walks, protects her with that Big umbrella,
It's
yes.
really inspiring. He goes from this self-centered, irritable guy to becoming a selfless caregiver.
Yeah.
He puts little Daniel's needs before his own.
It's like proof that love can change you. Even later in life, Daniel finds a purpose in taking care of this little girl.
It makes you think you're never too old to learn to grow. All right, so for our last story before we wrap up this deep dive, we've got The Balking of Christopher. This one, it tackles some pretty big questions about free will, about the meaning of life.
It really gets at that universal feeling of being stuck,
Yeah.
questioning your choices, wanting something more. Our main guy, Christopher Dodd, he's a farmer, and he's wrestling with these huge philosophical questions. And it gets so intense that he decides to just leave everything behind.
It's a pretty drastic move,
Yeah.
but it shows how much he's struggling inside. He literally tries to run away from his life, hoping to find answers out in the wilderness.
Yeah, and what's interesting is how his wife, Myrtle, and his niece, Ellen, react. They don't judge him, they don't get angry, they just help him.
It's a beautiful example of empathy. They understand that Christopher's retreat, it's not about them, it's about his own journey, his own need to figure things out.
Right, and it's through their support that Christopher eventually realizes that real happiness, it doesn't come from running away from your problems, it comes from facing them head on with the people you love by your side.
That's such a powerful message. And I think it's especially important today when it's so easy to feel alone, feel overwhelmed by everything.
Absolutely. And it brings us back to that theme of resilience that runs through all these stories. These characters, they teach us that no matter how hard things get, we can adapt, we can grow, we can find meaning and connection.
Man, what a journey this has been.
Yeah.
Reading through Mary E. Wilkins Freeman's The Copycat and other stories, each story, it was like looking into this, different life, facing different problems, but they all kind of left me feeling hopeful.
You hit the nail on the head. Freeman's work, it's amazing. She doesn't sugarcoat anything. Life's tough. But she always weaves in these threads of resilience, compassion. She reminds us that human connection matters. It's powerful.
Yeah, it's like she's saying, even when things are dark, there's always a little light. Maybe it's a child's love or like a random act of kindness. Maybe it's just knowing your family's there for you.
And she does it so well. The characters feel so real, so alive. You can't help but get invested in their stories, their struggles.
I know, I keep thinking about them, even after finishing the book. Like, what happened to Amelia and Lily? Did Johnny ever really find his place?
Yeah.
And how did Margaret cope with everything that happened to her?
That's the mark of a great writer. Freeman, she gives you just enough to get your imagination going. She lets you fill in the blanks, come to your own conclusions.
Yeah, it's like she's saying, here's the story, now what do you think? And that's what makes it so interesting. You can read these stories and find different meanings depending on where you're at in life, what you've been through.
Exactly. That's what makes this whole deep dive thing so cool. It's not just about the stories themselves, it's about what they bring up in us as readers, what speaks to us, and why is that?
So I got to ask, was there a story that really stuck with you, one that really hit home? And why do you think that was?
That's a good one. Maybe it was Amelia wanting to fit in, or Johnny trying to make a difference, or even Christopher struggling to find meaning in a world that feels kind of chaotic. Whatever it is, it's worth thinking about. Why did those stories connect with us on such a personal level?
I think maybe it's because we see ourselves in these characters. Their struggles, their little victories, those moments where they're vulnerable or they show amazing strength. We've all been there.
Yeah, and that recognition, that shared human experience, that's what makes these stories so timeless, so powerful.
It's like Freeman's holding up a mirror to what it means to be human.
Yeah.
And she's asking us to look a little closer, be a little kinder to ourselves and each other, and hold on to hope.
Well said. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive for today. But the conversation, it doesn't have to stop here. If a story really resonated with you, go back and read it again. You might find something new that you missed the first time.
And if you're ready to explore more of Freeman's work, definitely check out her other stories and novels. She was such a talented writer, and her work still speaks to us, even though it was written over 100 years ago.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the stories that help us understand ourselves and the world around us a little bit better.
And that's a wrap on another deep dive. See you next time.
You can download the book for free from our website.